On Wednesday, another head coaching vacancy was filled, and on Wednesday, once again, it was not by the Raiders. That plus more comes up on Thursday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for January 29th, 2026.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome here, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one sports podcast network. We're very proud of that. We're also very proud of the fact that this show continues to grow each and every day. And, of course, that's a tip of the cap to you, Raider Nation. Without you, we definitely don't have any show, so thank you so much for continuing to support the show on the daily. And also shout out to my man, Ari. Without him, behind the scenes, working his magic, there's no YouTube page. Many of you check out the show by way of the YouTube page. Thank you very much for that, and thank my man, Ari. Without him, it's not there. It's non-existent. So shout out to him. You can find him on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And, of course, we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line for you, 707-654-4693. As we normally do, we'll close out the show hearing from you. A lot of great feedback, calls, texts, a lot of good stuff. We'll try to get as many in as possible as we close out the show, segment number 3. Segment number 2, we've talked a lot about different candidates, who the Raiders could be narrowing down their head coaching search to. Feel like we really have a good idea now at this stage of the game who the leader in the clubhouse is, but what is it going to take to land that guy? We'll talk about that in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, which is really all thing head coaching candidates across the National Football League, as another vacancy has been filled. We'll jump into that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks apps today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. I'll tell you this. I know that there's no game this weekend. Obviously, the Super Bowl is coming up next week. But, man, it'll be so great when I'm doing this show at some stage of the game, and I don't know when it's going to be, next year, year after that, whatever the case may be, Lord willing, I'm still doing this show. It'll be so great when it'll be this calendar date, January 29th, and I'm talking about a crossover Thursday, right? If I'm talking about a crossover Thursday on January 29th, all is good. That'll be the day. I haven't had a crossover Thursday in the postseason since the Raiders made the postseason in 2021 when they were the wild card and they lost to the Cincinnati Bengals on the road in the cold in a game that they easily could have won. And honestly, Cincinnati went on to make it to the Super Bowl that year. They lost, but they did make it. So again, sometimes I just kind of visualize what it's going to look like and what it's going to sound like when that day comes. So hopefully I'm around when that happens. But let's go ahead and jump right into it, man. The head coaching search, obviously, that is on our minds. There's only 2 vacancies left across the league. Remember, this thing started off with up to 10. I know they didn't all happen right away, but at some point there was 10 vacancies. Now there's only 2. The Arizona Cardinals and the Raiders. And that's after the Browns decided that they were going to go with former Ravens offensive coordinator Todd Monken as their head coach. That's something that dropped early on Wednesday. Adam Schefter from ESPN put that tweet out. And I'll tell you, man, I do a show every single night. Well, not every night, but 3 out of 5 nights, I should say, on ESPN Radio with Emmett Golden from ESPN Cleveland. And, man, he did radio all day on Wednesday because so many different outlets wanted to have him on to talk about the hiring of Todd Monken as their head coach, and he didn't have anything good to say. Nothing good to say. Not that Todd Monken is not a good coach, but he just doesn't get you fired up. He doesn't inspire hope. Like, could you imagine if all of a sudden the Raiders came out and said, hey, Todd Monken's the next head football coach? It's like, okay, yay. Right? I mean, I know I was kind of on the fence at the very first when Pete Carroll's name was first being mentioned with the Raiders. I was like, yeah, I don't know. And then after talking to a few people and, hearing their side of things and being open-minded about it, I was like, you know what? Okay, this makes sense. Got me pretty excited because he's got the track record. He's got the resume. Todd Monken doesn't have that. Now, he did well in college, especially at Georgia, where they won a couple of national championships, but he wasn't the head coach. He was the offensive coordinator. So he's got that. He was able to coach up the Baltimore Ravens offense to help Lamar Jackson have some really good success. But remember, John Harbaugh just got fired in Baltimore because why? Because they wanted him to move on from his OC, and Todd Monken was his guy, and he didn't want to do it. So they said, all right, man, I know it's been 18 seasons. You got a Super Bowl victory. You get us in the playoffs all the time, but you're out of here. Right? Because Todd Monken, he wasn't willing to move on from him. So, that was the case. That was the new hire in Cleveland, Todd Monken. A trickle-down effect, and this came from Tom Pelissero from the NFL Network. He tweeted out, after the Browns informed defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz this morning they were passing him over to hire Todd Monken as the head coach, Schwartz was visibly upset. He said goodbyes in the building and told other coaches he's not coming back, sources told the insiders. Schwartz is under contract. Cleveland wants to retain him, but his future is now unclear. And Emmett went on Wednesday when we were on the show and said that what he's hearing is that Jim Schwartz completely cleaned out his locker. Now, I'm not going to sit there and suggest that the Raiders arrange marriages like they did last year when they went and hired Pete Carroll and then hired his OC and Chip Kelly. But if whoever ends up getting the head coaching job for the Raiders wants to get a really good defensive coordinator and it's not Patrick Graham, and there's a good chance that it's not Patrick Graham, I wouldn't have a problem with Jim Schwartz. I know he comes up with a little bit of baggage, but because he's a veteran, because he's been there, done that, has got some head coaching experience and knows how to coach up a defense, I would have no problem with that. I know that there's certain requirements that he's going to need as far as personnel, but again, I'm okay with that. Right? And I think that'll give him a good opportunity to be in a new location that's not Cleveland. Obviously, he's upset because he's been passed up as their head coach now twice. So there's that, just to think about. But again, I'm not going to sit here and suggest, the Raiders need to go hire him to be their DC, because they need to go get their head coach before any of that can happen. So where does that leave the Raiders? Well, Davis Webb, right, the Denver Broncos quarterback coach, and also what do they call him, passing game coordinator now as well, a guy that's had multiple interviews with the Silver and Black, a guy that's had other interviews with other teams, and there's other teams that are interested in him being a coordinator, and maybe Sean Payton finds a way to slide him into that OC job after firing his offensive coordinator. Like, that's all possible. And then there's Clint Kubiak, who cannot be hired to be the head coach until after the Super Bowl. Super Bowl's on February 8th. He can get hired as early as February 9th. So Vinny Bonsignore, now of the California Post, and also Raider Nation Radio 920, the morning tailgate, he tweeted out, I'm hearing Clint Kubiak's second interview with the Raiders is scheduled for Saturday. And that's what's going to happen. Tony Pauline, essentially sports.com, he was actually on my radio show on Wednesday and was talking about Clint Kubiak and the potential of him visiting with the Raiders and what he's hearing from Mobile, Alabama, as he's at the Senior Bowl there. And we'll let you hear that coming up in segment number 2. But in his piece on essentially sports.com, he wrote, on Tuesday, I was told Kubiak has interviews set up later this week with the Arizona Cardinals and the Las Vegas Raiders. The sense I'm getting is that he'd likely return to Seattle rather than taking the head coaching job with Arizona unless they somehow blow him away with an amazing offer. The Cardinals are not a very desirable job for anyone. So there's that. So Clint Kubiak, as Vinny Bonsignore pointed out, is going to be visiting with the Raiders on Saturday, and he's also meeting with the Arizona Cardinals, but according to Tony Pauline, doesn't sound like he's very interested in the Cardinals job. Now, I mentioned earlier Patrick Graham, and we'll talk more about Clint Kubiak coming up in segment number 2. I mentioned Patrick Graham. There's a good chance that he ends up with the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike McCarthy as their defensive coordinator. Josina Anderson tweeted out, I'm told Raiders defensive coordinator Patrick Graham is scheduled to meet with the Steelers on Thursday afternoon, per league source. Obviously, that's today. So PG is meeting with the Steelers. That's been rumored a couple times already. There's a good chance that he could end up in Pittsburgh as a DC. I kind of always had the feeling that he wasn't going to be back with whoever the head coach is going to be this time around for the Raiders. Just kind of felt like that it ran its course. I know he interviewed with multiple teams, including the Commanders. He met with the Dolphins as far as their head coaching search goes, and meeting with the Steelers. So that's happening today. I'm intrigued to know if he would take Robbie Leonard, the defensive line coach, with him, if he, in fact, did get that job. I would like Robbie Leonard to stay, but just like I said about Jim Schwartz, you can't arrange marriages. Whoever comes in as the head coach, you have to let them fill out their staff. Unless they say, hey, I'm in charge of the offense, right? That's my specialty. You give me some assistance with the coaching search, with filling out my staff. If they say that to the Raiders, then cool. Then they can go ahead and do that and try to work their magic that way. But you have to give that head coach the opportunity to go ahead and fill out his staff. So if you're keeping track at home, the jobs that are filled currently, the Bills filled with Joe Brady, Steelers Mike McCarthy, Ravens Jesse Minter, Giants John Harbaugh, Falcons Kevin Stefanski, Dolphins Jeff Hafley, Titans Robert Saleh, Browns Todd Monken. Again, the Arizona Cardinals and the Raiders remain. So what direction do I think the Raiders are going? Clint Kubiak, offensive coordinator of the Seattle Seahawks, who they're meeting with on Saturday. What is it going to take to get him to give a verbal agreement? Because that's all they can do at this stage of the game. Cannot officially sign him until February 9th. We'll talk about it coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple great sponsors we have here on the show, and the first one is Rocket Money. Let's be real. Managing your finances can feel overwhelming. Between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month, it's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. You would be shocked when Rocket Money shows you what you're paying for, right? All the subscriptions that you may completely forget that you have. It's already going to save you money the minute that you decide that you're going to download the app. And you'll track all your subscriptions. It'll let you cancel them in the app with just a few taps. Automatic transaction categorization is a game changer. You can finally see exactly where your money is going each and every month. So what do you need to do to get this game-changing app on your side? Well, let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Make that happen today. I also want to tell you about TurboTax. Tax season. Everyone's got them, right? Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or even connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get every single deduction for you. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saving and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. So for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. And if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, that's how you get it done. You just have to file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to talk about the feeling I have when it comes to where the Raiders are trying to go with their head coaching search. At this stage of the game, when it's already Thursday, one has to believe that, okay, they've got their guy that they've zeroed in on, and it's Clint Kubiak, and we know that he cannot sign a contract till after the Super Bowl. Now, he could decide to go back to Seattle. That's a reality. Right? He can even decide this weekend that he wants to be the Raiders head coach. And then before it's all said and done, before he actually signs the contract, say, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. I'm actually going to stay in Seattle. We have a really good thing going here. I don't want to be a head coach. Not right now. That's a possibility. I think Davis Webb is their fallback plan. If that were to happen, Davis Webb might end up back in Denver. He could end up somewhere else as the offensive coordinator, but sense is that he really wants to be a head coach, and this would be his opportunity with the Raiders. So it feels like that's the 1-2. Clint Kubiak is option A. Davis Webb is the fallback plan. And if neither one of those other guys, well, then they better come up with something, right? There's a few other guys that they've talked to that, have not taken jobs elsewhere that maybe they turn their direction there. But like I said, at this stage of the game, if it's not Clint Kubiak or Davis Webb, what are you doing? Right? I think the mystery is pretty much out of the bag. So Peter Schrager from ESPN, he tweeted this out. Both Las Vegas and Arizona have the opportunity to meet with Clint Kubiak again before the Super Bowl. The timing is typically mutually agreed upon by team, candidate, and in this case, the Seahawks. The expectation is that both Las Vegas and Arizona will take that opportunity to do so this weekend. That was from Peter Schrager. Jeremy Fowler of ESPN quoted that and said, expecting these interviews to happen Saturday in Seattle. Belief among some in the league is Kubiak is the lead candidate in both places. Now, again, remember what I said about Tony Pauline and his report that he had about basically if it's not the Raiders head coaching job, he's most likely going back to Seattle as the OC. Well, Tony Pauline showed up on my radio show on Wednesday for a few minutes live from the Mobile, Alabama, the place of the Senior Bowl, and talked about Clint Kubiak and kind of just gave a little bit of clarification of what's going on.
I was told yesterday that he's going to be visiting with the Arizona Cardinals and the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm told that if the Raiders job is not available to him and it's just the Arizona job, it's a very likely chance he goes back to Seattle. I don't know. I'd say right now it's probably 60-40 that he takes the Raiders job if it's offered to him. Like I said in the report, he is the it candidate. He is the guy that everybody wants right now. And it's a matter of him being comfortable with the situation in Las Vegas as to whether or not he takes it. He has the leverage right now. There are teams that want him as the head coach, so he can basically pick and choose as he wants.
What's your gut feeling tell you? Do the Raiders get a verbal with Clint Kubiak, or are they going to go with Davis Webb?
Well, I think what's going to happen is, since we're down to the wire, they will probably make Kubiak a huge offer. And as far as the verbal, I just think they're going to put a huge offer in front of him. Whether Kubiak says yes on Saturday or whether he waits till after the Super Bowl, we'll have to wait and see.
So that was Tony Pauline right there, just talking about, Clint Kubiak and what he's hearing there in Mobile, Alabama at the Senior Bowl. And you hear he said visiting with the Cardinals and Raiders, no Raiders job. He's back in Seattle. 60-40 is the percentage he gave on it. He said that Kubiak has the leverage and to give him a big offer. And that's what it feels like it's going to take. Right, one of the things that I talked about on my radio show on Wednesday was how do the Raiders prove to Kubiak, Webb, or any other candidate to take the head coaching job that it's not going to be the same. It's going to be stability, right? They're going to have an opportunity to build this thing up. It's not going to be one and done, right? They're going to have some patience with this, prospect. Well, one of the ways is what you heard Tony Pauline say: give him a real big offer, right? And so what I'm looking at 5 or 6 year deal. And I know that the GM, John Spytek, has, 4 more years left on his deal. He had a 5-year deal. Obviously, 1 year's in the books. He has 4 more years. I could see a scenario where they give, say, Clint Kubiak, offer him a 5-year deal and also give John Spytek 1 more year. So they're tied at the hip with each other, right? They both have 5 years. And it doesn't guarantee that they have to do that with Spytek. I'm kind of taking the model that the 49ers had in place when they brought in Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. Gave them both 6-year deals and said, all right, these two are together. It's a 1-2 punch. Because last year, Pete Carroll and John Spytek weren't a 1-2 punch. Pete Carroll was a Mark Davis guy, and John Spytek was a Tom Brady guy, right? And so that's how it all played out. And so, John Spytek wasn't really able to flex his muscles as the Raiders GM last year. He was really more like third on the pecking order. So now he's leading the charge. Him and Tom Brady, according to Mark Davis, what he said in his statement the day that Pete Carroll got fired. So 5 to 6 year deal, and I'm thinking 13 to 15 million a year. And I know, whoa, that's rich. It is. It's a lot of money. But you heard what Tony Pauline said, a big offer. And if anything says and screams commitment to that candidate, it's a big offer. And you're probably wondering, well, 13 to 15 sounds rich. It is. It's a lot, right? Right now, and this is the top 10 highest paid NFL coaches from the 2025 season. John Harbaugh is at the top of the list now with Andy Reid. But going into 2025, Andy Reid was the highest paid head coach at $20 million a year. $20 million a year. Sean Payton right behind him at 18. Then there was John Harbaugh at 17 with the Ravens. Now that he's in New York with the Giants, he's up there at $20 million. He signed a 5-year, $100 million deal with the Giants. So you do the math. That's easy. That's basic math. Then there was Mike Tomlin. Again, this 2025 season at $16 million, tied with Jim Harbaugh of the Chargers, $16 million. And here's the range that I was talking, 13 to 15. Sean McVay is at 15, Nick Sirianni's at 15, Kyle Shanahan's at 14, Vrabel's at 14, Ben Johnson's at 13, and Kevin O'Connell's at 13. So I'm putting that right there. 13 is the floor, and around 15, 16 is the ceiling, and that would be a big deal. That would be a large commitment. That would be saying, hey, Clint Kubiak, this is your team. You're the head coach. We're trusting the direction that you want to go. You've had 5 different locations the last 5 years, not because he was bad, because circumstances, right? He was OCs for different teams, and they got fired. And when they got fired, he had to go, right? And so you saw what he did as a quarterback coach there in Minnesota, right? He was helping the quarterbacks and did really well. You saw what he did in New Orleans early on before injuries hit Derek Carr and company with the Saints. Did really well. You see what he's doing with Sam Darnold in Seattle. They're in the Super Bowl. His offense is very creative. I just think that it makes all the sense in the world. I feel like all the chips are in the middle of the table when it comes to Clint Kubiak. The option 2 would be Davis Webb. He wouldn't demand a deal like that. But to me, that's what you offer Clint Kubiak. You give him a 5 or 6 year deal at anywhere from 13 to say 16, 13 to $16 million, which would be tied 4th highest paid head coach to 10th. So anywhere in that range is what you're going to give him. And that's rich for a first-time head coach. It is. But when you're a team that has fired, well, I had to move on from John Gruden. We all know about that. Rich Bisaccia was the interim coach. Then you fired McDaniels. He had a year and a half. Then Antonio Pierce was the interim. Then you fired him. He had a year as the full-time head coach. Then you brought in Pete Carroll. You fired him after 1 year as a head coach, full-time head coach. When you have that kind of turnover, that's just what you have to do. You're going to have to overpay. It's almost like free agency. You're going to have to overpay and overcompensate. And I know a lot of people are going to sit there and say, yeah, but those circumstances weren't necessarily the Raiders' fault. The only reason why they had to keep having this rotating door is because what happened with Gruden, and that really wasn't his fault. Look, it doesn't matter whose fault it was. Perception is reality, right? And it's almost one of those situations where you keep getting a call from your kid's school. The first time, okay, look, little Q, hey, Dad, it wasn't on me, right? It was my classmates, my friends. They pointed the finger at me. Teacher believed me. Okay, cool. Next time I get a call, Dad, it's not on me. I didn't do it. Well, whose fault was it? I don't think the teacher really likes me. All right, now I'm starting to look at it sideways. Next call I get, all right, look, it's no longer them, it's you, right? Something's going on with you. So, again, I say that to say perception is reality. When someone on the outside, like a Clint Kubiak, like a Davis Webb, like another candidate, is looking at the Raiders, they're saying, fired head coach, hired head coach, fired head coach, hired head coach, fired head coach, hired head coach. That's what they're seeing. Regardless of the circumstances, they don't care about that. They care that it's actually happening in real time in front of them. So that's when perception becomes reality. And unfortunately, that's what happens in a lot of different areas of life, right? There's certain things that people may believe about you from what they view from a distance and what they see or what they hear that they might not actually know, and it might not be true because they don't really actually know you. But again, perception is reality more times than not. Not that it's truth, but it's reality for a lot of people. And that's how it is in the league. When the candidates are looking at these potential head coaching jobs, they're like, yeah, if I'm going to have my very first job, my very first crack at being the head coach, do I really want to take a chance there where I tell my buddies across the league that I have them come and be on my staff? Hey man, we're going to Vegas, great venue, great practice facilities, great ownership. We're going to work with Tom Brady. This is going to be fantastic. Las Vegas is fun. Whatever the case may be, you're going to sell it to them. And then after a year and a half, you're gone. And they're looking like, wait, hold on. Now we don't have a job. So it's more than just the head coach. It's more than just the head coach's family. It's everyone he brings along with him for the ride. Right. And so I've brought up this example so many times. There's in the industry that I'm in radio, it's not a job that has a lot of staying power. Right. A lot of times, you're in, you're hired, and then you're quickly fired. If you have a nice 10-year run in one location, you've done a really good job. But if I was ever going to take an opportunity, and trust me, since I've been in Vegas, I've had about 4 or 5 opportunities to move and go somewhere else. One, I don't have any desire to go anywhere else because I'm in Vegas. Vegas is awesome. But 2, it's like, all right, well, is there any security in that job? If I'm going to move to Bristol, am I going to be happy there? Is my family going to be happy there? No. And oh, by the way, is my job going to be secure there? No. Probably 6 months later, they'll decide to make a decision like they did earlier this year or 2025 when I was doing Joe and Q, right? That started right after the Super Bowl last year. Literally the day after the Super Bowl last year was the first show, Joe and Q, middays on ESPN Radio. And it ended right as the football season started in 2025. That quickly because Rich Eisen came back. Nothing against Rich Eisen. He's fantastic. But could you imagine if I had moved my family all the way to Bristol, Connecticut for a 6-month job? And then all of a sudden, oh, well, hey, you're back at doing nights. Well, I could have stayed in Vegas and done nights. You know what I mean? So those are the things that you have to weigh. You have to weigh the options and understand if you really do have a nice ramp to build up. And coaching is even more, is more or less stable than my job, right? And so they have to have a feeling that, okay, this coach and my coaching staff and ownership we're all going to be on the same page, and they're going to give me an opportunity to build this thing up. So what I'm looking at, and I'd love to hear from you, 707-654-4693. We'll hear from you, calls and texts as we close out the show. What do you think it's going to take to land Clint Kubiak as the head coach, right? I mean, all they can do is get a verbal agreement on Saturday when he meets with them. What do you think it's going to take? What do you think the offer would have to be to make him feel secure in his job with the Raiders? I say a 5 to 6 year deal, $13 to $15 million a year. That's my offer right there, and I'm going to get out of his way if I'm ownership, right? We're going to have certain expectations each and every year, and he's going to know that from the jump, and I'm going to stick to those expectations that I pass along. That's how I get the guy to be the next head coach. But that's just me. What says you? Again, 707-654-4693. We'll hear from you as we close out segment number 3, as we close out the show. Coming up next here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple more great sponsors we have here on the show. And the first one is Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. If you need to hire someone for anything, what you need to do is go straight to Indeed. Be very specific about what you need, real experience, not just a resume buzzword. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs helps your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. I'll tell you what, we use Indeed at the radio station. We're still getting resumes in from Indeed, and we've already filled the job. We filled the job like 3 or 4 days ago, right? And we're still getting resumes in. That's how many people got their eyeballs on our posting and our listing that we had. Right now, spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of the show, the Locked On Raiders podcast, get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give you the job premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now. Support the show, saying you heard it on the Locked On Raiders podcast. And, of course, it's Indeed that you need. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. I also want to tell you about Gametime. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why you use Gametime. It's become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast. Without the hassle, it puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. You pull up the Gametime app, pick an upcoming NBA games, and tickets will lock in within minutes. You'll love seeing all-in price up front. No surprise fees at checkout, views from your seat before you buy and make the decision. It's super easy because you know what the view looks like. Zone deals, choose a section, Gametime picks the seats, and you save. Great last-minute options, too. With NBA tickets showing up at solid prices, you will love what you see with Gametime. Take the guesswork out of buying for NBA tickets right now with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's Locked On, LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today, and remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. Gametime.co. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts are off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Went a little long there in segment number 2, so I'm not going to get too much feedback in. I do apologize for that. I also do want to thank you so much for making this the first listen of the day. Let's jump right into it. Rich in the 831, he's calling to ask what happens if no Kubiak or Davis Webb. Here he is, Rich in the 831.
Hey, Q, Rich from the 831. Just real quick, you know, I'm trying to wrap my head around, you know, what if like Kubiak kind of backs out and Webb takes, say, the OC job somewhere else. I'm just trying to kind of like, you know, pick your brain. And you might have talked about this on your radio show or in some other, you know, spot, but I'm just trying to figure that out because it seems like it's come down to the Cardinals and the Raiders for Kubiak. And, even the Cardinals, I mean, shoot, that's what I'm trying to get at. Even the Cardinals interviewed Ron Rivera. They're like, shoot, if Kubiak doesn't accept it, and I know they got Mike LaFleur in the building, they're like, all right, maybe we just go with Ron Rivera, which is like, you know, it's kind of like that safe chick, you know, when you're like, man, I need to go to prom with somebody, you know. She said she might say no. She might say no, but hey, I know I got her just in case because no one's going to ask her. And I guess that's what's kind of going on with the Cardinals. You know, at least they're covering their bases. I don't know, like, what if we're left at the altar? Now, I'm not trying to, doomsday, you know, but I mean, it's good to have a plan. And, looking back now, I feel like Pete Carroll was that lack of planning. Kind of like, oh crap, Ben Johnson said no, so now we got to kind of, you know, and I was a Pete guy. And I know you've said many times, like, you know, like, hey, it's easy on the, everybody's on board with AP, but then you're the only one on that island. No, I was on that island with you. And even now my son gets on my case, man. He's like, oh, you really were in on Pete Carroll though, remember? And I'm like, yeah, no, I know I was because of his history and his past. But I feel like that might have came a little too quick. And hey, I mean, at the end it kind of worked out, right? I mean, we get first overall pick and potentially get a franchise quarterback. But, I mean, what other names are out there? You know, I mean, people are going to bring up the normal, like Chris Shula, you know, but we haven't really interviewed anybody. The only guy I was thinking of that we've interviewed second, like I look at second interviews. So second interviews was, Evero. I'm like, all right, is Evero maybe a possibility then? Not the worst hire, but not exciting. I feel like he's a smart defensive guy, but not exciting for me. I don't know about you, but I don't know, man. I'm just trying to get your thoughts on some names, not just like, hey, they can go after Chris Letters. I'm looking a little deeper. I'm looking at the in-depth on this one, Q, I don't know, brother. Just trying to pick your brain. Anyways, have a good one. Go Raiders.
Richie Rich, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. Love the prom reference, right? I used that the other day on my radio show. The Raiders absolutely need to have a plan just in case. They absolutely need to have that fallback plan. There's no doubt about that. Pete Carroll definitely was that guy last year. I feel like that it's all about Kubiak or Webb. And as I said in segment number 2, it's all about Kubiak, right? He's got to be the guy that they're going to throw all the chips in the table. They're going to give the huge offer to and see what happens, see if they can get that verbal agreement from him. And especially if they're going with Mendoza, they've got to go with the offensive-minded guy, right? So who's out there? Who's available? Kubiak, Webb, they all make sense. I don't think Kubiak's going to Arizona. The question is he going to go to the Raiders? We'll find out sooner rather than later. But thanks so much for the text. Definitely appreciate you. Got a text from Union, or a call. Got a text from Union Raider in Vegas. I appreciate the call ahead of time. There we go. Call in, text in. That's how we're doing. Union Raider in Vegas says, hey, what's up, Q? Just wanted to chirp in on the coaching search. I think all the top options are still available for us, and we'd be happy with Kubiak or Webb. And now it's between us and the Cardinals. I think we have a great chance to get who we need. But just like playing Bones, study long, you study wrong. Hopefully we find out after the second interview with Kubiak. I'm more interested now with the new OC and DC, who that'll be. Should be a really good offseason as long as they do the right things. Have a good one, Q. Raiders. That's Union Raider in Vegas. And I agree. Study long, study wrong. You definitely you're going to go wrong. There's no doubt, man. I love the Domino's reference. That's fantastic. Really good stuff. And, yeah, that's going to be the interesting part of it. What does his staff look like, right? Is he already kind of putting his staff together, even though he doesn't necessarily have the job? One would hope that he is, because a lot of these coordinators and assistants could be already gone, swooped up by someone else that already has a job, especially since he can't officially sign the paperwork till after the Super Bowl. So there's that. We definitely have to pay attention to that and hope that he's able to, put that staff together. And I'm sure that in this second interview, he'll probably relay that to the Raiders of who he'd like, and maybe they could do some of the groundwork while he's still coaching up the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. Real quick, we'll close out with one more quick text. This is from Wave Cutter Raider from Sierra Valley. It says, Q, Evero is our guy. They wanted Mentor and Miss. Evero is a polished version of Mentor. That's from Wave Cutter. See, I told you it was super simple. Ejiro Evero, the former defensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers, a current coordinator of the Panthers defense. I don't think that is the guy. Not that he's a bad coach, and not that he would probably do a bad job, right? I just feel like that they would already hire him. He could be hired already, right? I mean, he's not coaching. They're not in the Super Bowl. He's available right now. If they decide that they wanted to hire him and make him their next head football coach and let him start putting his staff together, they could. And the fact that they haven't makes me feel like he's not their guy. Now, maybe to your point, he might end up being the third guy up if they don't get Kubiak and they don't get Webb. Maybe he's their third option. I don't see him as being option number one, though. If so, I think that'd already be signed, sealed, and delivered. But that's just me. Thanks so much for that text. I appreciate you. And that's all I got time for. Like I said, went a little long there. Segment number 2, Jose from McAllen, Texas will get you tomorrow. EP will get you. And a text from Willits Raider will get that as well. Plus more as we close out the week really strong. We do have the Raider Squad show later on this morning, 7:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. That'll be Lincoln Kennedy, Chantel Chan, and myself. 1 hour long, 1 hour strong. And trust and believe this conversation will roll on the Raider Squad Show. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.